Good morning to you. Thank you so much for keeping it NBS Television, and welcome to the topical discussion. It's a Thursday. It's always a conversation about the economy. And what's been making rounds, what's still making rounds is the rationalization of government agencies and authorities. And Parliament has passed quite a number of the rationalization amendment bills. Of course, rejecting rationalization of some agencies, including the Uganda National Roads Authority and many others, but also saving authorities like Uganda Coffee Development Authority, but others were taken back to their mother ministries. Are we doing a cost-benefit analysis of these? Are we going in-depth into the conversation of how much we'll be saving as a country, how beneficial this is going to be for us, or we're taking the political idea of rationalization is going to help us save here and there? I'm privileged to be joined by two distinguished gentlemen to take us through this conversation, and starting off with my right is Honorable Muwanga Kivumbi. The people of Butambala are well represented here, but is also an economist. A very good morning to you and a pleasure having you here.
Good morning to you and morning everyone and our viewers.
Thank you for making time. It's been a while. You should be very busy with the parliamentary duties.
Oh, my dear, you don't want to know. It's quite a job to do.
The site tells it.
It's quite a job to do. I was used to my relaxed job of a shadow minister. But this one of chairing park is difficult. Very difficult job.
What makes it a difficult job?
On another day.
Okay, that tells the work that you are doing. But thank you so much, Honorable Kivumbi, for making time. And Dr. Fred Muhumuza here. He's also been away for a bit. We were almost giving him a card. We retracted it. We will wait until he becomes more here, as frequent as he was. But a very good morning to you. That's tongue-in-cheek. Thank you for making time for us.
Thank you, and good morning, our viewers. It has been a teaching season, and sometimes you have that lecture that is on Thursday morning.
Oh, yeah.
So NBS gets into the cooler, but now that people are going
and you educate and
yes, people are going into exams, so now that engagement is shelved until later. At least it gives you flexibility to do more things in different times. Yeah.
All right. It's a pleasure having you right here, gentlemen, as we get into what's been in Parliament. And I'll start with you, Honorable Muwanga Kivumbi. I am starting with you because you're in the House, which has discussed...
With those who started it.
with that, which, I mean, you've been in the House that passed, that has talked about many of these bills and discussed them. First of all, let's look at the overview. What are you gaining? What are you getting from the conversations, the discussions on these rationalization amendment bills so far?
Foremost, I'm a firm believer in a lean, efficient government. A very firm believer. If you're going to run a market economy, and the engine of it is going to be the civil service, that civil service has to be lean, efficient, and to let the market forces do the job for you.
Okay.
Therefore, even as when I was the Shadow Minister of Finance, I authored, by that time we were under COVID, the first COVID budget. It's when we started, I don't want to put it to myself because I used to work with a team. I did a great job of looking at the budget and came up with a 5 trillion savings scheme, if it is pursued. And I wrote this document. I said, in this budget, there is 5 trillion which you can save. And one of it was to roll over agencies that are duplicating a lot of work. There was a lot of duplication of work. And with it was coming a lot of cost centers that were avoidable.
Okay.
That's when the likes of Muhumuza professionals picked it up and said they wanted it to rationalize. You know, for them, they baptize things. I don't know what that one meant. But then the key thing was, what was the process that gave birth, and what were the factors that gave birth to these agencies? A lot of them were not of economic nature, they were of a political nature. No, they were economic, but they were of a political nature. For example, the political establishment was grappling with placement of top cadres. So when you look at most of the boards of those authorities that you want to roll over, they are filled with political cadres. But also, there was a problem of salary structure in the main civil service. Now, a mistake had been committed whereby authorities and other government agencies attracted a better salary than the mainstream ministries.
Yeah.
Therefore, so many technocrats who had an opportunity to reform any sector, in the process of reforming, they would create an authority with a view to move from the civil service and go and head this authority and attract a better pay and a better contract, better retirement, and better flexibility with the resources. So they left many ministries literally without so much to do. Ministers were weak, permanent secretaries were weak, and therefore, when you look at most projects, me and Muhammad have shared these figures. When you look at the 14 trillion of undispatched money, which we've borrowed, and you ask where they are, most of them are in projects that are run either by government ministries or by these agencies. And this is one actually first told me now a new story. He told me, see, if you milk it somewhere along the way and you squeeze all the juice, you can abandon it because there is nothing more to get from out of it and it stays redundant. That's why you have projects that would have lasted 2 years, taking 10 years. Actually, they last the whole loan period before they are completed. And that's absurd. Therefore, the effort to rationalize institutions was a welcome effort. But unfortunately, I believed, because of the nature of our politics, the best allies the best supporters of rationalization should have been opposition. But by the nature of our politics, the president chose to think he will work with his troops. His troops, one, most of them are from those agencies. Most of the MPs, so many MPs, were working for those agencies. So many, I'm not saying most, but quite a number, are former workers of coffee, of
so
whatever.
Are you insinuating
yes.
They are jeopardizing the rationalization process, and how?
No, I'm not. Please don't draw conclusion. Let's have a conversation before you do the conversation. So that's where the problem started. Is that where do you get your MPs? Either you get them off as activists, but those are not many because they don't have the resources to campaign. Okay? You get them through the civil societies, they are comfortable. Most civil society people don't want to go into politics. So where do you get your MPs? Most of your MPs have now today been RDCs, if they're NRM, worked around the office of the president, or they are from those agencies. And you can have a quite number. Therefore, they had allies inherently that had worked in those institutions. But also, over time, those agencies, they are in sectors, okay, where they are clustered, and they have allies. So it was not easy for you to roll them over without their buy-in. And I think the likes of Muhammad having done everything, they didn't do a good job to convince those MPs of the need. They did a shoddy job. And because of that, I think
we actually didn't do any job. We couldn't get to the MPs.
You did what?
We didn't do any job there because we couldn't get to the MPs.
Why? You had the structure should have taken them to Chankwanza as you normally do.
Honourable, you were doing
did
a tie.
lot of homework around.
Yes, so you're saying because there wasn't any convincing.
Again, the president believed he can have one meeting and literally give them his opinion, and as usual, but it's about who we are. It is existential. The stakes were higher. And But there were also agencies that even some of us who were for rationalization questioned the rationale. Okay? For example, the road fund was set up with an objective to levy a tax on fuel and have a fund to finance our road infrastructure. This over borrowing to build roads, okay, were supposed to have to levy. For the people of Uganda decided to pay a tax on each liter of fuel or paraffin. And that money would go towards building roads for us. Now, that whole act, the moment it generated, he knows the numbers, those figures, were never put in the road fund. They were put in the main what? Budget support. And we went to borrow money to construct roads. Yet we had said no. The way we would go around building our roads is that we will levy a tax. But the money was put for general budget support. So you are rolling over a fund whose objective you never attempted to do, and it was never operationalized.
Then would you want to still stick to maintaining the road fund?
No, I'm not saying, I'm just giving you an example. I'm not saying that should stay. Instead, you set up with Uganda, the UNRA. Now, when you set up UNRA, for the time it has been, government should have grown UNRA into more or less an autonomous body that has capacity to build roads, okay? Not only in Uganda, but regionally. This CRC you see of China is a government road construction agency. But it has even gone global. And do you see, now those who wanted to rationalize UNRA, did they have that picture? That instead you can transit it to something else other than killing it and rolling it back to be a procurement desk in the Ministry of Works and Transport.
Okay.
And those were issues. To some of us were saying, wait a minute, I think this is not as usual. As usual with all government endeavors, by the way, a common denominator is process means management.
Thank you.
And
I'll hold you.
And a poor implementation.
I'll hold you just a little bit. Taking you back, let me come to you, Dr. Fred. The excitement that came with the talk about rationalization and then bringing a bit of a reduction to the cost of public administration was really good. Here we are, Parliament has started, passing on the rationalization amendment bills. Are we there?
Of course, if we were there, we wouldn't be here. The reason we are here is because we are not there.
Okay.
And you want to begin on two things really. Strategy can be everything. And as is mentioned, if you get into the road fund, what was the purpose? Road maintenance. Now, you don't want to lose sight of that purpose. But along the way, you begin to look at the behavior of government. So why do I need a road fund? For money that is being collected mainly alongside the mainstream budget collections. Because this was to add 100 shillings to a litre of fuel, 200 to a litre of fuel. Already you have a system that collects taxes from fuel. So the road fund is not going to be the one raising that money. It will still come through the URA. All you needed was Parliament to ensure that that 200 goes to that function at the appropriation and allocation level. That government does not divert it to anything. Because the executive can put it anywhere. But that's why the budget goes to Parliament. So you'd want to first ask, where is the 200? I want to see it in the road maintenance line, both at the central government level and at the local government level. How have you distributed it there? If it's not there, guys, go back. We are not appropriating this budget. So there I don't need a road fund at that point. Because I can still do that and make sure these line budgets will go into UNRA direct. For the roads we have agreed on, will go straight into the local government budgets. Because these are the ones who actually maintain the roads. But now you have added an inbox there which has no value to add to the intention and the process. Now, rationalization was looking from that angle. And as he has mentioned, sometimes interests came in. We could have said, going by global experiences, the China experience, let's preserve UNRA, but remodify it. So you take back the act to say UNRA should now be structured like this and like this to do ABCD and continue to get its money. So we were initially looking at the
So UNRWA
rationality.
is saved. Are we looking at that remodification anyway?
Now, that is the next phase.
Okay.
You want to say, now that we have saved it. But the original intention of streamlining and rationalizing delivery of services should not be lost. So how should we look at UNRWA? Of course, UNRWA needed to be saved in a sense that I couldn't see capacity and readiness in the ministry, mainstream, to do what UNRWA is doing.
Okay.
And that's why I was saying people just attacked them, and when you could hear behind the scenes, people were saying, how can a UNRWA director get so much more than the PS? Now, you're already losing the point. A doctor who works in a hospital has a right to be paid more than the owner of the hospital because of the work that they do. Don't go and say, but I own this hospital, how can doctors earn more than I do? How can a pilot earn more than? A pilot is a pilot, and that's why you make your money. So already part of the focus was lost into personal interests. And as he said again in Parliament, the personal interests have come up. Some people worked there. Others still want these entities because you can say, we saved you, I owe you, you owe me. So you must go to my constituency and do the following. And it wouldn't be a surprise that some of those conversations have happened or are going to happen, derailing us from the mainstream focus of can we rationalize really to reduce on government spending. Looking at it in the detail of the current budget that we have, some of these entities are still not going to perform. They are only going to take hemorrhage in terms of salaries, because those you must pay, in terms of rent, because they must stay where they are, in terms of logistical costs, their vehicles, electricity, airtime, flying abroad, travel inland, but with zero release on non-wage, they are still not going to perform. And that's what we're trying to say. If I have 10 entities with zero release non-wage, can I close off 7 so that the savings there can now go to 3 as non-wage to enable them deliver?
But then would that be changing anything because they have not performed, not because they are inefficient, but because you didn't give them the money?
Exactly. Now I don't have the money. So I'm trying to find money by squeezing and cutting down my budget to say, since I can't get new money, let me try to rationalize the budget that I have, because something must be done.
Okay.
It's like you get into a hospital, you say, well, we could have put benches there, but we don't have them. We even may have benches. And so, well, let's deal with them, but we buy and equip the theater. So you are really rationalizing, trying to say, which are the core services that the population must have? How do I finance them? In the absence of new money, I must find money from within the current budget. So you look at some of these and you say, the service will still continue, but the 3 agencies will now be merged into one. Now, that one agency that remains would have wage and non-wage and be able to deliver the service. Because between me and you, I don't benefit from the fact that government has paid its employees as a citizen. That is no benefit to me. I only benefit from the service that that citizen does. If a police officer is paid but can't be deployed on the road as a traffic officer because there is no non-wage to bring him or her to pay bring them some water, some food, so that they are on that road for the whole day, would still get clogged up, but you can't tell, no, we paid the police officers. If there is a murder case or a criminal case anywhere, and the police can't come because fuel is not there, their vehicles are not maintained. So you really want to make sure there is money in each of these boxes. You've paid the salaries, the non-wages are available, then I benefit from the service. That was the thinking. But now where we are is a problem, and we have tried to avoid the parliament because we knew this would happen. You used the strategy of the 90s. How did this government structure adjustment program? Setting off Uganda Commercial Bank, Uganda Airlines, liberalization of all these breweries, foods and beverages. Now, that point we had, the planners had chance that Mr. Museveni, the president, was also the speaker, because the chairman of NRC. So they would agree in cabinet and come and go through parliament. But now you have that very dicey situation. But still as executive, sometimes you are the driver. People may hoot, hoot, hoot. You are the person to decide and say, no, there are children crossing the road. I know the light is green. The children may have made a mistake and come when their cross is red, but I can't just drive through them. When you're on the steering wheel, you have to take some executive decisions.
Hasn't
and say,
the president done so?
Now, that's maybe the next phase. If we are to really save the economy, for me, this is not about individuals or agencies. We need to salvage this economy. And we have no savings, by the way. As he has said, I need to find 12 trillion to knock out what we are calling refinancing of debt. In this coming budget, it is 12 trillion. That is not new money. But it creates interest, which is now 8 trillion. So you're talking of an 8 trillion that is not going to speak to any service delivery now, because it is interest to those who lent government the 12 trillion. And until you pay them, your interest continues. So we need to find where do we get the 12 trillion over maybe 5 years and knock that item out of the budget to get now fiscal space to meet the basic increasing needs of road maintenance, including you funding your UNRWA. So those are the dicey situations on the policymaker's desk and the budget officer's desk that we need to say now that rationalization has not happened to the way that will generate funds. And we shouldn't lose the last part of it. It was rationalization of agencies, part A, and public expenditure, part B.
Yeah.
Now, part B is even bigger than part A.
Yes.
So now we can say part A has gone this way. We can cry a few tears, but at least Parliament has given us something. Now let's go to the real monster, rationalization of public expenditure.
Okay.
That goes to all the entire government. And I'm seeing tendencies where your government is walking into the deeper end of the swimming pool without knowing how to swim in the deep
Without
end.
the other life
All right,
jacket.
thank you. Thank you very much. And I'll come to you, Honorable. And I think you both mentioned a very important aspect that are we just trying to clear up the symptom and not getting to the root cause?
You see, two things were missed. He has talked about the beauty, and that's a big miss. The president, if he had been convinced about rationalization, he should have started with the low-hanging fruits to rationalize his government, his ministries. That would have sent a signal.
Yeah.
Because where do I start in solving a problem? Here you have a 70-something cabinet with so many ministers of state. Okay? And these are political decisions. Had he started that way, saying, I'm hell-bent on rationalization, I've started with home, with what is within my own hands, without even needing parliamentary approval, is to rationalize government totally, across the board. That didn't need parliamentary approval, by the way.
No.
Okay? Was it even attempted? No. Two, even other agencies at the core of rationalization were not willing to walk the whole distance. For example, you are rationalizing NPA, Population Council, but as the Minister of Finance, you are maintaining the planning department and whole secretariat for planning. All these things that NPA looks at, there is another department at the Minister of Finance now. If the willingness was like, well, even dealing away, okay, with what is with us, it would have sent a signal.
Were Ugandans duped?
No, what I'm saying, was government serious?
Okay.
Okay? Was President Museveni serious on rationalization? He should have started with the low-hanging fruits and send, because you see, when you are in the leadership, you send a signal, okay, for all your cadres, and you know, this is where we're going to act. Then the other thing is, you start rationalizing, as I said, the biggest rationalization and debate, by the way, in this country, is around expenditure.
Yeah.
Okay? As a president, because you see, the biggest problem we have in this budget is to first budget for expenditure without budgeting for revenue. And you put in a lot of needs that you need as a country. I've just spoken about you borrow money. You look at these numbers and you want to cry. I'm actually finalizing a report on a consolidated account. Next week it's ready. But part of it is even ready because it is in the Auditor General's report. I'm only brushing it a little bit to add a few things that maybe the Auditor General would not do because he's not a political leader. Okay? Now that me, I'm a political leader in looking at these numbers, I put the sharp ends to the report. But you look at the money we borrow and it doesn't get utilized. I looked at the money that is sitting on accounts in terms of dollars and in terms of shillings of some of these projects. They are over 3 trillion. I've been debating with him until we sit down and have an honest conversation. First of all, he has talked about the 12 trillion debt rollover that is going to be. How has it grown? 5 years ago, this rollover was 3 trillion. We've nursed it every year to 12, hemorrhaging another 8. And then your revenues have been growing. So where did you sleep on the job? And stop to say, when in 2020-21 budget, I made a proposal to Parliament to cap expenditure to the level we were at. Don't even reduce any money, any agency.
Stay there.
Stay where you are.
Yeah.
Okay? Get all the extra revenue to finance a debt rollover.
Yeah.
Okay? And I'd given them 3 years down the road. By that time, they would have knocked it off. Now, and you had created a fiscal space. One, this money that is in debt rollover is also by citizens. And then two, do other things. Pay off the domestic debt. Because this is where you are holding people's monies that is working money.
They cannot engage in
They
business.
cannot engage in production. People are mortgaging property. So stay where you are. Not advise that you reduce your expenditure. No, stay at where you are.
Yeah.
And don't add anything.
The appetite has kept growing.
My friend, every other agency comes with what they are calling a list of unfunded priorities. You ask, how can a priority be unfunded?
One of those two words has to go away.
No,
It's either funded or it's no longer priority.
if it's not, and each agency, and I blame finance, each agency is given a budget ceiling.
Yep.
I think by September, the PSST issues a budget ceiling. Tells you, please, budget. This is the money you'll have. All those are not being abided to. During the BFM, budget framework paper, the law says you must approve at a budget framework paper a budget ceiling for which government will not run away from it. I was in Parliament when I insisted on the provision of in the PFM. And Olanya said, no. If you cap government ceiling at BFM, how about the recommendations we are making? Okay, where will they be? Said, no, as Parliament, you must be convinced there will be revenue that is going to finance the budget. And now I know, Mr. Muhammad and listeners, that you have never generated. Budget has never actually performed beyond 45 trillion.
Yeah.
No single year on planet Earth have in actual spending have we had a figure going beyond 45 trillion. So what's the rationale then
Of
consistently coming up with 58?
And 50.
Knowing that you have never performed
It's
beyond
being-
45.
So it's being hemorrhaged somewhere.
No. You ask the
never
rationale.
get the
Who is
revenue.
this planner that has the audacity to balloon your budget by 10 trillion, and that 10 trillion will never be real?
Okay.
But
Thank you.
do you know what it is? You reflect on it and you borrow against it. And then you also have a 3%, which generate out of the 53.
Yeah.
Because I was saying, we cap it now to actual.
Yeah.
If you want a 3%, I have a proposal that is being fought by government about supplementary budgeting and these other things. I want to amend the Public Finance Management Act. It's being fought all over. But we are saying, cap this expenditure, how can you have a supplementary on July 1st? When you pass the budget in June, before you read the budget, these guys have prepared a supplementary. Yeah. What kind of planning is that? So, and that's a bigger conversation, which is about fiscal budget discipline than even rationalization.
Thank you very much. That is where I would ask, did we start off on the wrong footing, or did we choose to start the easier way than what exactly we needed to start off as a country?
We started actually on the right footing and then lost it somewhere, the footing. That is if we're even still doing any progress at all, because we seem to have gone back. And really, it's not just rationalization should be seen outside the context he's describing. Because this is the bigger trying to reset the budgeting principles and realign the revenue and expenditure side.
Where we should have set, and then that would be the precedent set for even the agencies in their own expenditure.
Yes. Exactly, and there are certain things that were violated. And if you are to really say whoever has violated this should not come back as accounting officer, you would have none left. Because, and I find that sometimes it's guilty. Because when you're cutting non-wage, some of these things you're cutting and you're giving a zero release is actually what they do to deliver the service. Is very critical to this institution, so you are simply pushing the accounting officer to create arrears, which is a violation because we are the commitment control system.
Or a diversion, a mischarge.
Or a mischarge somewhere else. Which are all violations that are going to end up in his back on an accounting officer, innocently, a fellow who is trying to manage what he can. If I ran in Agric, I remember this was an experience I had. Agric fellows had these stock farms. They have animals. And now you have cut non-wage. Non-wage is where they buy the feeds for the animals and the drugs for the animals. The animals eat every day. These are animals not for slaughter. So they must be healthy, they must be well looked after because we take their semen to go and inseminate the other cows. Now you are endangering that whole scientific process intended to deliver the objective the president is talking about now of billions of liters of milk. Part of it is coming from those investments. So when you come back to the budget and say, I don't have money, but where are my priorities? And this is where really the priority issue came in. And the whole message of ceilings, way back in the 90s, to say, let accounting officers know what is there and plan within. Don't come back with unfunded priorities. Reprioritize or defer them, because some of the things called priorities can actually be done later in the subsequent years. For now, plan with this. But that predictability has also been lost. Because you give the first budget call circular in September, this is where you should be. Then they do their budget framework paper, which goes to Parliament by end of December. Parliament looks through, makes comments, you issue the second in Feb to say, based on Parliament and any other information that come up on revenues, this is where you should be. Guys, again, plan. You submit the budget by end of April, or rather March, because 1st of April it should be with them to begin looking through it so that they can approve it by end of May. Now, while that is happening, you see another corrigenda, reducing the ceilings again. What is this accounting officer supposed to do? And then, as he has said, they seal budget on that 52 trillion, and again, the real actual release is going to be much less. Now, you want to learn from history, and which is his point. If I know this journey always takes me 3 hours, but I always plan for 4 or for 2, let me realign to the reality. The reality is 45. Don't issue a budget beyond that. Don't give false hope to your own people and private sector. And these are some challenges private sector has faced. They see a government budget, they go and plan to deliver to government. They actually borrow and deliver. And then the delivery is not paid. Arrears are created, banks foreclose on them. Some of them lose their vital property that they used. You kill off the very private sector that has formalized, because there are people there is benefit in formalizing, but the former are dying because they went into trade and business with government. How do you salvage the economy? And we said one of these is actual rationalization. Mr. Government, come back to sanity. Now, you can go back and say, my budget is 45 trillion. Mr. Parliament, you saved these institutions, but I have no money for them, and I'm not going to pay salaries without non-wage, because that institution will still not function. My intention of government is service delivery, and service delivery is both salary and wage. If I don't have both, I am sorry. It remains on the law books as an unfunded priority. Because it's not me to remove it from the law. But we have so many institutions that are in law, but not funded. Yeah. I just put it in that box. And that's why I say the executive can still proceed to achieve the objective of salvaging the economy where we are. We must cut the budget. What do we cut is another matter for discussion. Because now that we cannot
for discussion.
Maybe another step. Would we do it concurrently?
No, let me tell you. You all know. For example, in the Committee of Defense, where I was for quite some time, for some reason, because those are classified expenditure, government came up with.
Maybe
let me tell
allow
you,
me, maybe 2 minutes. We need to take a short break, and then we need to take a very short commercial break and return with that specific conversation. Concurrently, differently, where did we start? Where did we need to stop? Let's get back. Much for keeping it NBS Television. It's still the topical discussion, and Thursday it is always conversations about the economy, and we are trying to throw more light on this rationalization conversation and how best we're doing it. Are we ticking the boxes right? I have Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi and Dr. Fred Muhomuza, both economists, but also Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi, a member of Parliament, Butambala. As we went for a break, you were talking about different issues, but also you were highlighting the idea of one-off budgetary allocations that have become a habit. They become a part of a budget, and that continues to swell particular budgets of institutions and agencies.
Yeah, that is, you could go through all government agencies, because every government agency, even NBS, may want a one-off to upgrade your equipment. So once you get it in this financial year, you are not going to draw the same budget, capturing the same expenditure as a one-off. I was giving an example. It's a classified expenditure whose details I don't know anyway. But government had gone out of its way to pursue some defense capability and capacity over a period of 5 years. An outlay was about 10 trillion. But it was supposed to be paid 1.4 per year. Okay? Now, I tracked when they came, and this is the essence of being a bit longer in the Parliament because of a memory history. I had tracked this figure when I was in defense, because the thought processes were brought, we agreed, and Bahati had addressed us in Sedena, also the budget, that this was important. Now, I counted 5 years down the road, and the payment schedule. And no year did we miss on this one, because it was classified, it's not touched, it's like a statutory obligation, which is always given as is. So we had finished the payment. But I found in the next year's budget, defense was carrying the same 1.4 outlay for its equipment in another budget. I queried it. They just changed the nomenclature and said now 1.4 is for retooling. Now, you cannot retool on the same amount of money as you are paying for a particular contractual obligation.
Who's to blame for such?
Not only so, even you go to institutions that have special functions. You have a national conference, like I've just had what? This
G77, non-aligned movement, you had CISPOC the other day.
So you would go for all institutions that got the budget for that, they should be swept out. All institutions that were at the core of G7, non-aligned, in this year's budget, we would see a reduction of their budget equal to the amount that was allocated to them to cater for the other activity. What happens? This budget just grows. They just stay the money in the base. We gave that money to UNRWA, one time to immigration. I've seen all agencies, it's a habit. So they simply grow. We are saying, wait, what are you rationalizing? You are going under UBRA, disability, 1 billion. I know the figures there. The agencies they have rationalized have almost zero budget. Their budgets are not material. In account, they call it material. They are not material in the broader picture. Now, those that are material in the broader picture have been saved. Therefore, the debate about rationalization cannot be just about merging agencies. No. If we debate that, then as a country, we are around a wrong debate. But what must happen is that the country, Uganda, because we have reached a level where you can't pay our wage because of our debt obligations, why we can't pay our running of government. Because if you can no longer finance your recurrent expenditure, then you are headed for trouble. So therefore, the bigger debate, I don't know where it will be generated, where it must involve a lot of stakeholders, not only parliamentarians, but the political leadership. We must sit somewhere and speak true to ourselves. You cannot have a government that does not pay. For example, if you have had an earlier in this financial year verified 2.7 trillion, okay? It is logical that in the next year you give it a priority. But you only now raise new areas. You have not even cleared these ones. They go into, I've looked at mandamas, court obligations, court awards. I've looked at them, I said, wait a minute. All this money goes through a court process. And there's something I'm investigating, because rules don't permit me, of an agency, of a law firm, okay, that went out, made the case under some ministry, and he demanded 20% of 200 and something billion. So one law firm is going to walk out with 68 billion because it pursued this case.
Of government within a government process.
Of government within a government process. 68 billion, and I know the firm. But of course, I'm a chairperson of a committee. Rules don't permit me to say much than that. So you are looking at this assets. This is huge. These are avoidable.
Thank you.
Government is paying these costs.
Who is to blame? Thank you very much, Honorable.
But let me also tell you.
Dr. Momuza, maybe I will hold you a little bit.
Just giving you an example. This will interest you.
Yes.
The other day I was looking at Solicitor General's office. Contract process, approval. Just a dispatch of a finished contract. The auditor noted somewhere taking 0 to 5 days. Said that's very good. Others were taking 5 days to 14 days. Says that is a delay. Said 14 days, below 30 days. Said significant delay. Those are taking above 30 days of dispatch. Do you know how many there were? 88 contracts to dispatch them. Having fully signed, we are taking more than 30 days. How do you run an economy like that? And in the process of contract approval. So if you are only going to streamline contract approval so quickly and streamline work and good payment, you may need, there's a lot of money you will save. So,
all right. Let me come to you. I kept listening to Honorable talking about how we keep pushing our arrears, the one-off payments that continue to recur as a part of a budget. Who is sleeping on the job?
As you said, even contract contract is approved, just dispatch. And these are the people who are saying we preserve these institutions, we preserve this public service. So for me, if only they can do us a favor at the end of their report and say we have concluded these things, but let's continue and rationalize public expenditure.
Will we need another bill? Because we even struggled with this. We started with an omnibus rationalization bill, then we said let's go agency by agency.
But whether they do or they don't, the government owes it to itself to rationalize its spending, because it is headed nowhere. If you're going to have 40% of your budget sitting in debt management, you need to resolve the debt issues. And you don't resolve debt issues by simply looking at the figures. You go back to the left-hand side of that budget line and say, which items are creating this hemorrhage? Can I deal with them? Now, some, as we've said, require parliament. Some don't require parliament. Walking through that budget, you can remove most of those one-off items which have persisted in the budget. You would save something. You're not even saving, you're only saving yourself additional borrowing to finance those items. Then you want to get in and say, what other services can we do better? Online also came in as an option that we can do. If you must do meetings, you can, and sometimes you force these agencies, you go to the field and you find 5 departments of the same ministry are in the field to collect data. Which data can actually be sent by the local government online? Because private sector does that every day. I don't think Stanbic and Baroda and whichever banks go out there to collect data from the branches. It's online. So why don't you benefit from those things? But you'll find the whole budget of inland travel. What are people actually going to do?
Collect data.
Collect data, meet local government officials who have been trained, some of them better than the central government officials, to go and supervise and inspect. You want to open up those things and say, can we rationalize? Either even regionalize, and say supervision now of hospitals will be done at the referral level. You refer, in any case, you are the one who receive these cases around you. Take charge of that space. So no more movement from headquarters. We shall call, we shall do it. Because some of these consultants at the referral levels are more sophisticated than the people at the headquarters. So they can manage. And they are the ones on the front line. So you want to look through all those processes, starting with the one that I don't need parliament, because I know the next 2 years is going to be so complex to get things done through parliament. unless you are taking the political boxes, and a lot of technical boxes are not politically aligned. But they are rightly aligned if one is looking into the long term. But give it to them, they need to be back in 2026. So avoid going there with things that you can do in your house. Now, the next parliament of 2026...
But if the person who is supposed to do the in-house is not doing, and
now,
not even
if that
showing.
is where you get back to a problem, and some of these principles are there. We have said medium-term expenditure framework. Every time we do a budget 2024, we are projecting all the way to 2029. So I want to see these one-off items. What are they doing in there? What do you plan to do in future? I want to see that spike, and then it goes out.
Is it the accounting officers who are...
Of course, the accounting officers,
are accountable for
you
this?
have budget analysts at the Ministry of Finance. The sector people should be knowing. But also you need to get back and say, how do I strengthen the budget directorate in Parliament itself? Because those are the technical fellows that should be reading the fine print and saying, I've found a comma. What is supposed to be 7 million, the comma is in the wrong place. Because you know these commas are ever after 3 digits. If I change that comma, I can put something different. If I don't put a full stop, the zeros will join the big figure. And yet the zeros are supposed to be point this, which is nothing. So you want to read that fine print because the people who are crafting in a way will hide behind the print. And once you approve that print, that's the law. So they will say it was approved. So we need more work to be done behind the scenes in order to get back to the processes and realign ourselves to the right course of development.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi, moving forward, then what? Because looks like the whole aura, the excitement around this rationalization is only saving us peanuts. The bigger picture is not what we are discussing.
Yeah.
How do we move?
For example, he has looked at the Auditor General's report. One of the things is what we call implementation of activities. Because after all the figures, all the outputs you've set, they are costed activities. Now, I've not seen any single report of implementation of activities where an accounting officer did not either mischarge or divert. Not even the one of Ministry of Finance itself. Not even the one of Accountant General. Because I've heard the questions to look at them.
Of course, even the one of Auditor General when you finally see it.
The Auditor General's report is not with me, it's with the COSASE. But again, in a later date, we are going to have a conversation with the finance. Why do the accounting officers, you can roast them, but they tell you, we have no option.
Exactly.
One of them told us, you see, you have this budget line. You are telling us so many presidents are going to visit. Find within your budget
Exactly.
ways of and the man does not, he cannot achieve it through what they call the environment, because the environment is restricted to only 10% on a given activity, and it is approved by the PSST, and he cannot do a reallocation. A reallocation is approved by Parliament. But the money has been told, next week, somebody, the minister is traveling, you've got to find the money. Because he was not given recurrent expenditure, and there is some money somewhere on development line, he will go for it. And say, the big man has to travel, has to do ABCD. Therefore, all agencies are in big trouble on how to account for funds, activity financing. Not a single one can escape. If I were to take them on, all of them, I would simply say they can no longer be fit to be accounting officer. But they come and explain it to you. Says, for all intent and purposes, we are well meaning. We have no option. So you release money for wage in Q1 only. Okay? No money for recurrent, no money for development. Next quarter, even where you feel it is so passionate, how can, for example, we are speaking of the 100 billion, which were given, 1 billion, which was given for district, for roads.
For roads,
in a year. Up to this quarter, they have just given them 500. Until I was with him on a talk show somewhere, until I challenged the PSST on PDM. Okay? They had just given each district 50, each parish 50, and it was lying. And their planting season was, so they cannot even release with the planting season. And this PDM is anchored around agriculture and modernization of. You can't know that now in March, people need to buy seeds and plant. But you are now going to release money in July. And to do what? I mean in June. To do what? To be eaten for school fees. So those small things are one where we should have a big debate on rationalization.
Are you promising us as Parliament to raise the dust over this?
As I keep on saying, the parliamentary term and the presidential term has two legs. It has the first half, which is the first 2.5 years.
Which is now gone.
Which is gone.
Once you don't do things in the 2.5 years, the second half, all the budget is always a political instrument. Yeah. Therefore, whether it's a member of parliament, whether it's a president, the priority is how I return.
And at times the first term is learning because there are so many new ones.
The attrition rate is high.
The attrition rate is high. It is for running. The few
you
people,
talk of vehement. What are you talking about?
What I talk about vehement? What do you mean?
And in his committee,
you are dealing with fresh people, and the turnaround is always 90%. So, and this time it's going to be higher, most likely. So, that's a challenge that a country grapples with.
Okay.
And I believe now, for me, I think this is the test of how strong President Yoweri Museveni still is. If he so believed in rationalization, this is why the country needs his executive power. Yeah. Because the buck stops with him.
Okay.
All these bills are going for his signature.
All right, and we will see where he appends, what he assents to, and what. I'll give you just 1 minute, Doctor. Then what? Because we seem to have gotten a raw deal. If it's a loaf, we have half.
No, haven't gotten a raw deal, as he said. They are debating. The bills are going to the president. Now it's the moment for everybody. So at what point do we now make sure we get at least more? But most importantly for me,
why I'm saying the raw deal is that where we expect the biggest advantage for the country and saving money and getting the revenues that we so much need is not where we're actually acting.
Yeah, and that's why I want to say the next phase, the rationalization of public expenditure. Because for it is not strict to agencies. He's saying public expenditure. Wherever it is, we need to rationalize that. We can come back to the same agencies as well, but there is Mukene, as he has mentioned. Some of these entities really, you don't even notice them in the budget. You won't save anything, but you want to go now for the real areas. And one of the things we must deal with, the refinancing, 12 trillion. We keep to knock it out. You cannot just wash it away. You will check your interest payment. You want to look at all these other things. And now salaries are coming up. They are increasing significantly. They take second priority after debt service. So the rationalization of public expenditure should now be the next talk. Remove agencies. And we move on to that next phase. And we are going to have that conversation, beginning of that conversation really at the Makerere University Business Economics Forum. We have only invited the press this afternoon. Because we are in exams, we don't want to disrupt exams, but we know the press will carry the message.
Yeah, and the difficult conversation must stop.
Must start.
Let's, as a country, must sit down.
And the president should be ready with his pen on executive orders. Because as he said, we are now going into the politicking phase. I know he too is married in the politics, but the buck stops with him of both the politics and the economics.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I think that wraps up the conversation on a much higher note, that where we need to go is rationalizing our expenditure, the public expenditure, and that also includes suggestions like reducing the size of parliament.
The whole political this whole conversation must start.
And I may not reduce the numbers, I can reduce what we take.
Let us ask Vori for money. What is it that, in terms of quality and substance, has the 550 parliament done better than when you had a 300?
Yeah.
Somebody needs to analyze. For me, even the bigger debate, whether you need a parliament that sits every day.
Every day, yeah. And sitting physically.
And
these are all areas of rationalization.
Sitting physically. Whether I should go the Chinese way, whether I need to resign my job to be a member of parliament.
Yeah.
Or, like, because once you have streamlined the country,
Yeah.
and most laws are stable, okay, you must have a dividend. You need to sit every day to have a matter of national importance.
Do like
if
we
you have
do.
money for disaster preparedness, I mean, must a constituency here, there has been a flood. Do I need to be a guest of the state 365 days to be a member of parliament?
Okay.
Because this weight will even lift off the weight of members of parliament off the obligations in the constituencies.
Becoming ATM machines.
Yes, because so we need to
Treat it like a board. They come and do and go.
My biggest thing, can President Museveni, so late in life, be the leader to lead us in that conversation?
Time.
My answer is no.
Time is what probably could be able to tell you are right with a no or a yes answer. But anyway, thank you so much, Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi, for your time. And thank you, Dr. Fred Muhomuza, for your time as well. Very right, so public administration is the highest burden that the country has that needs to be streamlined. Thank you for joining us, and on social media, we can continue with this conversation. I am Mildred Tohai. Say good morning. God bless you.